Well, it's break time, folks, and not in the usual way that we take breaks, but we got some brake stuff for OG73. We got some jingly stuff. We got some frictional stuff, and we got some round stuff. We also got some slickery stuff. Welcome to Hoss and Pfeffer Garage. So obviously we need some front brakes on OG73. Check the rears, they're okay. Um, the brake system on the vehicles, about 80% of the braking is done on the front anyway. So unless you're doing lots of hauling or towing, maybe something that maybe can change the dynamics of the braking, um, it's not unusual that you're going to change the front brakes before you change the back brakes. Maybe every other time. Sometimes I've had every third brake change I've had to replace the rear brake. So it just kind of depends on the vehicle and the driving style and what you're doing with it. But you got two new rotors. You can always have the original rotors turned, but I found usually when that happens, you're removing the material that affects the heat dissipation. So a lot of times you get the rotors turned, and if they're not already warped, they warp easier, right? So I usually just go with new rotors if I need to. We've got ceramic pads, Power Stop, Evolutional Plus. And like I said, we've got some jinglies here. This is a Power Stop kit that I got that included the rotors and the ceramic brake pads. So it's set up for 2001 F-250 four-wheel drive. So one thing I haven't figured out yet, this is what Power Stop sent the rotors in, and I ain't quite sorted it out yet, but these got to be good for something, right? So we're gonna ponder that. I don't think we're gonna throw them away, but we're gonna ponder that and figure out what we can do with them. But we're gonna throw all this stuff on and see what we stop. And the sun is all the way on today. All right, so a few things that can indicate that you may need to have your brakes addressed. Sometimes you'll hear the screeching when you apply the brake. Once the pads get down to a low level, they're made to give you an audible indication that they need changing. So you may start to hear the squealing, screeching, or whatever term you choose to apply here. But they'll start making noise. Once you get past that, if you really let it go, it may start to sound like a grinding noise. That's bad. You definitely want to have that looked at then. You may, if your rotors are warped, you may start to feel a shake when you apply the brake. And sometimes that can be if you run through high water or something like that, if your brakes get really hot, and then that instant cooling effect of running through water may or may not cause warpage of your rotors, and you'll start to feel that in your steering when you apply the brake. Sometimes worn suspension slash steering components can kind of do that too. So, but you'll definitely want to get that checked out. One thing you'll notice when you look at your brake pads, you have kind of a wear indicator here in the center. If you don't see that groove, it's time to replace them. There's also somewhat of a bevel on these that if you peek through there and you don't see a bevel, if it just looks straight, then yeah, it's probably time to have them changed. So just a few things to keep in mind. Alright, so you guys can see we've got our jack lifted up OG73. We've got his passenger side tire off, and we got our jack stand over there so he doesn't collapse on my noggin. But essentially we're gonna be replacing the brake pads and the brake rotor. We're gonna have to remove the brake caliper. The brake caliper has these two. It's got a bolt here and then another bolt down here, and then our brake caliper bracket bolt here and also down here. So we're going to get to doing that. You may notice that we've already changed the brake line. We did that a while back when we first got OG73, but so he should be good there. So we're gonna get to removing this, getting our new rotor on. Now on OG73, I usually just lay the caliper right there on the leaf spring so as not to put the brake line in a bind. And there you have it. So it's our old rotor, not that bad, really doesn't have much of a lip here. You know, it could have been okay for a while. Brake pads on this side aren't really that low either, but a lot of times when I have something like this, I'll keep this stuff just in case. You never know when you can't get parts, as evidenced by 20 to 22 during the hystericals. So we may hold on to these just in case, but we're going to throw our new stuff on. So if you are gonna take it somewhere, just try to educate yourself a little bit on what it is you're talking about. There are horror stories out there. I had a family member that went and took his 94 Ford Thunderbird to an establishment. It was actually a chain. I won't name any names, but they told him he needed an entire new brake system. He couldn't figure out why his brake pedal was hard, and he couldn't hardly stop. So he takes it to them. They tell him he needs a whole new brake system. It's going to cost $1,500 to $2,000, I think. So instead of doing that, he chose, well, screw that. I'll just buy another car. So he did, and was going to call the salvage yard to come get it, and they were going to pay him $500 for the car. I said, man, I give you $500 for the car. Worst case scenario, if I can figure out what it is, I'll call the salvage yard and get my $500 back. So I did. As I was putting the vehicle on the trailer, I'm pressing the brake pedal, and I'm like, man, I think it just feels like there's no assist, right? Kind of like when the car is off and you're just sitting there and you're pressing the brake pedal and it's just really stiff. So sure enough, get it back to the house, start doing a little troubleshooting. It's like, man, I'm gonna try me a brake booster. So I go to the junkyard, get me a brake booster from the junkyard. I think it was like $20, $25, something like that. Get back to the house, throw it on there, right as rain. Drove that car for 4 years for $525. Actually, I actually traded that car in on another car, and they gave me $500 trade-in. So I actually drove the car for 4 years for $25. Point being, be careful who you take it to. All right, we're going to slide our new rotor on here, maybe. Put our caliper bracket back on. Torque setting tight, but not too tight. So alright, when you replace your little clipper doodads, there is 2 variations at least. So you got to make sure they match when you replace them, right? Because like this one's the exact opposite of this one that we took off. So we'll throw this on. Got some spunk on our rotor from handling it. So we'll douche it down with a little brake clean and get the funk off. We're going to let that dry a tad bit. Alright, so our brake pads are actually ceramic, so not just for pottery folks. Ceramic actually does pretty good at stopping things too. So we are going to take a tad bit of the lubrication, put here on the back. I don't know why they never make the tear strip functional. grease keeps the squealing down. That didn't sound good. So when you're applying your brakes, without the grease, they resonate, which can cause that high-pitched noise when you brake, when it applies the frictional forces. So the grease helps reduce that. It's probably a better way to put it. Slip these in. Now, seeing as how the previous pads were worn, our brake caliper is now squeezed in a tad bit. So what we need to do is kind of squeeze these pistons back in a tad bit so that we can get them over the brake pads. So as far as what kind of brakes to purchase, you know, there's infinite choices there. There's different pad material like I talked about. These are ceramic. You can just get your regular organic. They're a little less expensive. I mean, there's, you know, obviously high-end ceramic rotors. There's big brake kits with drilled and slided rotors and 6-piston calipers and the whole 9 yards. So, you know, if you're just going to do a little maintenance and replace them, you know, just go use the catalog and, you know, your make, model, year, and, you know, you'll figure it out. But basically, any brake pad is going to be better than a bad one. So I wouldn't get too hung up on whether or not you should use ceramic or organic pads and all that kind of stuff. If you're just trying to get by as cheap as possible, you know, organic is fine. They do create a little more brake dust than the ceramic, and the ceramics I think tend to last a little longer. They're a little more tolerant of heat and things like that. So, you know, it just depends on your application and what you want to do with it and your budget. So you go out there and figure that out. See, you've already found a use for this thing, one of many I'm sure to come. So in order to compress these pistons, I've actually gone up top and removed the cap to the reservoir so as to allow the fluid to backflow a little more freely. We'll take an old shoe and a C-clamp, and work this in a fashion that can compress that piston, or the pistons I should say, since it is a dual piston. Get this set up right. Let's do it this way. Excuse me folks while I figure out what it is I'm actually doing here. Alright, so we've got it situated. We're using our old brake pad. We've got our C-clamp oriented correctly, and like I said, I've removed the reservoir cap above, and we're just going to tighten this down real slow. You don't want to go too fast and blow your seals out. So that's all there is to it, folks. Not too bad. So we're going to knock out the other side and call it.
So high, I'm hypnotized. What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through. Dangerous times, don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world, but keep the sky on your mind.
Alright, so we've got our brakes done on the front. You don't want to forget to put your cap back on your brake reservoir, and I guess that brings this project to a stop. But that being said, it's time to take this thing out for a test drive. Now there is the bedding of the brakes, different procedures on how to, a few hard stops, and you stop hard, let them cool, stop hard, let them cool, to kind of bed the brakes and things like that. It's kind of like breaking in the engine. Everybody has their different ways of thinking. So, my suggestion would be follow the manufacturer that you chose to purchase your product from, and go that route. Otherwise, I'm going to take it out, and hopefully it stops. Don't forget to put your brake reservoir cap back on. Now, the first time you press the brakes, pedal's going to go, may go straight to the floor, and all that is the brake calipers, because you remember we moved the pistons out in order to get them back on the brake pads. So this is going to feel a little spongy until that those brake pistons come out and meet the brake pads. So before you take off, you might want to pump your brakes a few times and make sure you got some before you go, headlong down the freeway or something like that. So, but other than that, like I said, we're going to take it for a test drive, and if we make it back, I'll see you in a few minutes. All right, folks, we're going on our little test jaunt for our brakes, and like I said, initially cranked the truck up, gave the truck a few pumps, and got the brake pedal feeling nice. So now we're gonna go out and do a few quick stops and bed the brake pads, and call it. So alright folks, we did some hard stops on him, and feels pretty good, pretty even brake. He's not cutting out anywhere, trying to throw us in the ditch or nothing. So I think we're gonna call it. Well, that's gonna do it this time, folks. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll catch you next time.